He laughed when I dropped the ring. It clattered across the floor of the cabin porch like a coin tossed to beggars. I bent down to pick it up, but my fingers shook too much. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. He did, though. He smirked. He actually leaned against the railing, looked out at the lake like we were wrapping up a fun little weekend. Not the moment he stole my life. "You don't have to do this, buddy," he said, as if this wasn't exactly what he'd been hoping for. I wasn't wearing shoes. I'd stepped out of the house barefoot after hearing her whisper his name in a tone she used to reserve for me, just his name, over and over like a chant. I should have walked back in, slammed the door, screamed, but I didn't. I just stood there holding the ring I'd planned to re-propose with. We were supposed to renew our vows that morning. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "This isn't the time." Okay, not the time. My knees buckled before I even realized I was falling. I heard a bird caw somewhere in the trees. It sounded like it was laughing at me, too. He was barefoot, too, probably because it was my cabin. He didn't even bother to bring shoes. Just walked in, stole my wife, and sipped my orange juice from the mason jar she painted for our anniversary. "Look," he said. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, but he didn't sound sorry. He sounded satisfied. She didn't touch me, didn't say my name, just stood behind him wearing my flannel shirt like it belonged to him now. I think part of her wanted me to fall apart. Maybe she was testing me to see if I'd finally grow a spine. Spoiler, I didn't. I drove away that morning still barefoot, left everything behind. The food, the ring, the woman I thought I'd grow old with, and the man I once called my brother. I couldn't stop shaking. Not from cold, from something worse. Humiliation. That sick heat that climbs your neck when you realize you're the last one in the room to get the joke. And it was a joke to them. I stayed gone for months, didn't answer texts, didn't check socials. I lived in a motel room with walls so thin I could hear the guy in 4B cry every night until I realized I was louder than him. I lost everything except my name. But the weirdest thing happened the following spring. A stranger walked into that same motel lobby holding a broken suitcase and asking for a room. I almost didn't look up, but when I did, she looked like she had the same crack in her chest that I'd been hiding under sweatshirts. I didn't fall in love right away. I didn't even ask her name, but she noticed I was wearing mismatched socks. She smiled. That smile. That was the start of something that would bring me back to life and one day bring both of them to their knees. They took everything from me. But when they saw who I married, their faces told me everything, and I didn't have to say a word. The motel room was always too cold. The heater made clicking sounds like it was pretending to work, and the carpet felt like damp cardboard. But that night when she walked in with the busted suitcase and tired eyes, something shifted in the air. I don't even know why I was in the lobby. I didn't talk to people. I avoided them. But I was down there pretending to read a brochure about a local fossil museum I'd never visit when she pushed the glass door open with her hip and cursed under her breath because the wheels on her suitcase didn't spin anymore. She didn't look like someone who wanted to be noticed. She looked like someone trying not to cry. She spoke softly to the front desk clerk, but I still heard her. She asked for the cheapest room for just a week and promised to pay cash in the morning. I think her voice cracked when she said, "I just need somewhere to not exist for a little while." I didn't move. I just stared at the stupid dinosaur brochure and waited until she was gone. But later in the vending machine hallway, we bumped into each other again. She was standing there in socks trying to get a bag of peanut M&Ms to drop. I offered her a quarter, but she shook her head. "No offense," she said, "but I'm done taking things from men who look like they're about to fall apart." It should have stung, but instead I laughed. Not a real laugh, just that broken exhale you make when the pain's too tired to argue anymore. That obvious, huh? I asked. She looked at me like she wasn't sure whether to pity me or join me. Then she whispered, "You're wearing one white sock and one navy blue." That's usually the first sign. We didn't become a couple, not right away. We became silent neighbors in exile. We watched terrible TV through the walls, heard each other's late-night coughing fits, and passed each other in the parking lot like ghosts learning to walk again. Some nights, she left food outside my door. Canned soup, cheap sandwiches once, a granola bar, and a sticky note that said, "In case you decide to keep surviving." That sticky note is still folded in my wallet. It wasn't love. Not then. It was something slower, more honest. She didn't ask me what I'd lost, and I didn't ask her what broke her. We just shared the silence like it was a language only we spoke. Weeks passed, then months. The air started to warm again and my socks started matching more often. And one morning, without a plan, I asked if she wanted to go somewhere with me. Just drive, no map, no expectations. She looked at me the way people look at broken clocks, wondering if maybe, just maybe, they could still tell time. We ended up 3 hours away in a tiny coastal town where nobody knew our names. I remember she wore a borrowed windbreaker and held her shoes in one hand as we walked barefoot on the sand. I asked her if she ever missed the life she used to have. She said, "Only the lies. They were easier than the truth." I didn't tell her about Olivia. I didn't tell her about Harper. I didn't need to. Because when you've both been torn apart, you start to recognize the scars without asking where they came from. We stayed in that town for 4 days. On the 5th morning, she said, "You know they'd hate this, right? Your ex and that friend. They'd hate seeing you like this. Quiet. Better." It was the first time she mentioned them, and the first time I realized I hadn't checked their social media in over 2 months. I didn't even know where they were anymore. And for the first time, I didn't care. But that wouldn't last because something was coming. Something that would bring all of us face to face again. And when it did, their laughter stopped cold. Because the woman standing next to me, the one they never saw coming, wasn't just stronger than them. She was the kind of unforgettable that turns karma into poetry. And she had a reason of her own for wanting to confront them. It was supposed to be just another quiet morning. We were back at the motel temporarily, saving up for a place that had real floors and working locks. I was brushing my teeth in the dim little bathroom with the door half open when I heard her knock on the window. Not the door, the window. That's how I knew something was wrong. Her eyes were calm but too still. She was holding her phone with both hands like it might explode. "You need to see this," she said, and slid it toward me on the sink like it was radioactive. There was a video. Granny, the kind people record with too much confidence and not enough conscience. It was Harper, my former best friend, standing on some golf course patio with a bunch of half-drunk men in polo shirts. Olivia was beside him, wearing white again, always white, like she was trying to convince everyone she was clean. He was telling a story, a loud one. So then I said, "Bro, just walk away. Let me upgrade her." And he did. Can you believe that? I told him straight to his face and the guy just left. Saddest dude I ever met. Everyone roared, glasses clinked. Olivia didn't stop him. She smiled and mounted something that looked a lot like poor Everett. I leaned over the sink, gripping it so hard the ceramic creaked. I didn't feel anger, not at first. I felt small, like I was right back in that moment on the cabin porch with the cold wood under my feet and the taste of blood in my throat from biting down so hard to keep myself from crying. But this time, I wasn't alone. She stepped behind me and rested her chin on my shoulder. You okay? I shook my head. No, but I'm done letting them define me. She gave me the smallest nod. Then let's make sure they see it. We didn't come up with some dramatic plan. There was no montage, no sudden makeover. What we did instead was quietly rebuild. I stopped being afraid of mirrors, started shaving again, got a job at a used bookstore 2 towns over, and came home smelling like paper and dust instead of despair. She started drawing again. Portraits, mostly sad women with secret strength. She told me one of them looked like Olivia, but the version she saw now. Empty eyes, fragile bones. I told her she was being generous. When the bookstore owner offered to let me host a small poetry night, I said yes before I could think twice. And the first time, I stood up in front of 12 strangers and read a piece called Borrowed People. She was in the front row mouthing the words with me. That night, we made love for the first time. It wasn't loud or fast or movie perfect. It was quiet, honest, a little awkward but real. That was the beginning of us. For real this time. Not as 2 broken people clinging to survival, but as 2 human beings who decided to choose one another in the wreckage. And then the letter arrived. It was tucked in our motel mailbox. No return address, just my name. Inside, an invitation. A wedding. Harper and Olivia. They were finally getting married. Apparently, the affair wasn't just some long, messy face. They were making it official, and in a stunning display of cruelty or delusion, they invited me. The envelope included a handwritten note in Olivia's cursive. "You deserve closure," it said. "We want to show there are no hard feelings." Closure? Is that what she thought this was? I handed the note to the woman beside me. She read it once, then again, then folded it very slowly and looked up at me with a face I couldn't quite read. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I opened my mouth, but the truth slipped out before I could filter it. "I want to show them I'm not the punchline anymore." She tilted her head and smiled, but not the soft kind. It was the smile I imagine a wolf makes right before it lunges. "Then we'll go." She didn't blink. She didn't hesitate. She just said it like it was the weather forecast. And that's when I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. She had her own reasons for wanting to be there, and I was about to find out why. The venue was pretentious. That was the first thing I noticed. Olivia always said she wanted a simple wedding back when she still talked to me like I mattered. But this place, a modern glass and stone estate nestled on a private hill surrounded by vineyards and the kind of pines that only grow where people cared too much about appearances. It wasn't just a wedding. It was a press release, a declaration, a high-end parade where the bride and groom pretended their love hadn't started with lies and betrayal. We pulled up in a borrowed sedan, the kind that didn't scream wealth but didn't apologize either. She wore a deep navy dress, nothing flashy but perfectly cut. Her hair was up, her posture unshakable, and when we stepped out together, people turned. That was the second thing I noticed. People stared, not in a way that said, "Oh, look who finally showed up," but in a way that meant they didn't know what to do with the sight of us. Me, the poor Everett, they had all pitted or ignored, walking in beside someone who made Olivia look ordinary, not because she was prettier, though she was, but because she glowed differently. She carried something real. I don't think Olivia recognized us right away, not until Harper leaned in and said something into her ear. She turned, and that's when her mouth froze open just slightly, like a glitch. Her smile didn't return until a few seconds too late, and when it did, it looked strained. "Everett," she said, her voice like someone remembering an old injury. "You came." I nodded. Couldn't miss the performance. Beside me, she stood calm, scanning the space like a detective at a crime scene. She wasn't nervous. I don't think she'd ever been nervous. Harper approached next. That smug half-grin he wore, the one I used to mistake for charisma, now just looked like a crack in cheap plastic. He offered his hand. "Glad you came, man." I didn't take it. I just looked at him, then at Olivia. "Nice place," I said. "Expensive for people who once split rent with me." That one landed. I could see Olivia's eyes flicker to her bridesmaids. Was she being watched? Could anyone else hear this? Harper just let out a forced laugh and turned to my date. "And you must be," she smiled, "cool as frost. The last woman you'll wish you didn't underestimate." He didn't know what to say to that. Neither did Olivia. We walked past them without another word and stepped into the reception garden where a few scattered guests were mingling over champagne. No one approached us for a while. They just whispered, tilted heads, glanced over shoulders. And that's when something happened that I wasn't prepared for. An older woman walked up to us slowly, gripping a cane. Her face was sharp, elegant, like it had once belonged to royalty, and still hadn't accepted otherwise. I recognized her instantly. Olivia's aunt, the one who used to call me dependable in the same tone she'd used for kitchen appliances. But now, she looked at my date with visible recognition. "You," the woman whispered. Wait, you're her, aren't you?" My date nodded politely. "Depends who you think I am." Olivia's aunt blinked. "Oh, she's going to regret this." Before I could ask what the hell that meant, the woman hobbled off, muttering to herself. I turned. "Okay, what was that?" She didn't answer right away. She just reached up, adjusted my collar gently, and whispered, "You're not the only one who has history here." That was when I realized something important. She hadn't come here for me. She'd come here for her own reasons. Something deeper, something personal. I didn't know it then, but the story I thought was mine was about to become hers, and by the time the first toast was made, someone would be crying. But it wouldn't be me this time. By the time the ceremony started, the clouds had gathered low and heavy above the vineyard. The chairs were lined up with military precision, champagne still sweating in glass flutes no one dared touch. Harper stood at the altar in a tailored blue suit, fingers twitching just enough for me to notice. Olivia was hidden behind two oversized oak doors, waiting for her cue, and every guest sat in hushed, uncomfortable silence, the kind that usually precedes a storm or something worse. I sat next to her, the woman who had arrived in my life like a question I didn't know how to answer. She hadn't spoken much since Olivia's and had recognized her, but I could feel the weight building in her chest. Whatever she came here to face, it wasn't done with her yet. The doors finally opened, and there she was. Olivia walked down the aisle like she'd never done anything wrong. All smiles, eyes forward, chin high. She wore white lace draped across her like a costume, and I mean that literally. She looked like someone impersonating a bride, someone who'd memorized how to walk gracefully but hadn't earned the right to look that happy. When her eyes met mine, just for a flicker, a half-second slip in her performance, I saw something else. Not doubt, not shame. Fear. Harper didn't see it. He just smiled like a man who thought he'd already won. Like the best man in every movie who got bumped up to main character the second I exited stage left. And for a while, I stayed silent. I thought maybe that's all. This will be an awkward cameo. A reminder I still exist, that they didn't erase me entirely. But then the officiant said, "If anyone here has reason, these two should not be wed. Speak now, or forever hold your peace." There was a pause, longer than it needed to be. 1 second. 2. and she stood up. My date. The woman who saved me from that motel. She stood up without trembling, adjusted her dress like she was just arriving at a business meeting, and walked, not rushed, not theatrical, straight toward the front. Murmurs, gasps, a few phones raised, of course. Olivia visibly stiffened. Harper's grin wavered. "Excuse me," she said to the officiant. "I have a reason." He blinked, clearly unsure if this was some tasteless prank. Then she turned, but not to Harper, not to Olivia, to the guests. "I apologize for the interruption. I won't take long. I just want you all to know who you're applauding today." The murmur turned into ripples of discomfort. I could hear someone near me whisper, "Oh no, this is one of those weddings." But no one stopped her. She reached into her clutch and pulled out an old priest photo. She held it up. "This," she said, "was taken 8 years ago on a campus where Harper Winns used to volunteer as a mentor for new students. That's me, 16, pushed into a closet with him after a party he wasn't even invited to." Gasps, not dramatic ones, the real kind. The kind people try to hide with their hands over their mouths. Harper went pale. Olivia looked like she'd been slapped. My heart stopped. I begged him to stop. She continued, still calm. "He said no one would believe me. He told me I was lucky to be chosen. He gave me a fake number and said if I told anyone, he'd ruin me. So, I didn't tell anyone until now." Harper stepped forward. "She's lying," he said. "I was darting everywhere. She's obviously trying to sabotage us. Everett, tell them. Tell them this is some setup." I didn't move. I didn't even blink, because I finally understood why she never flinched when I cried in my sleep. Why she stayed so calm when Olivia humiliated me. Why she wanted to come here. This wasn't my closure. It was hers. I kept the photo. She said, "I filed a report this morning. You'll be contacted. But I thought it was only fair your wife heard it first from me." She turned to Olivia. "You always wanted the bigger life, the applause, the spotlight. Well, here it is. Enjoy your moment." Then she walked back toward me. And you know what? I didn't feel small anymore. Not worthless. Not forgettable. Not that broken background character Harper always assumed I was. I stood, took her hand, and walked out with her. Not because we needed to run, but because they needed to sit in what they'd done. The moment we stepped out of the ceremony garden, the sky broke open like a wound. Rain hit the pavement in sharp, heavy drops fast enough to soak us before we made it to the car. But we didn't run. Neither of us even flinched. It was almost peaceful, like the universe had been holding its breath too long, and now it finally exhaled. We didn't talk on the drive home. She leaned her head against the window, watching streaks of water chase each other down the glass. I just kept both hands on the wheel, knuckles pale. Not from fear this time, but from how tightly I was holding back everything I wanted to say. Not to her, to them. When we pulled into the motel parking lot, she reached for the door handle but paused. "Do you regret going?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "No, but I wish I could have looked him in the eye and told him what it felt like." She turned to me slowly. "Then tell me." So I did. I told her about the night I overheard Olivia talking to Harper through the cracked bathroom door, laughing about how easy I'd been, how I just packed a bag and left like a good little loser. I told her how Harper once stood at my front door, claiming it was better this way, as if he'd done me a favor. I told her how they publicly mocked me at a dinner party using fake names, assuming no one would recognize who they were talking about. And then I said the thing I hadn't even admitted to myself. I wasn't sad when she left. I was relieved. I just didn't know how to say it without sounding like a liar. She nodded like she understood exactly what I meant. Then she told me her part. It wasn't just Harper. There had been others, men like him, always powerful, always older, always wrapped in titles and fake promises. But Harper was the first one who took something she never gave. And Olivia, she had known. They were friends, briefly. Olivia had heard rumors. She even joked about them once, told her to be smarter next time. And that was the thread that pulled it all together. Olivia had always been that kind of woman, a climber, the kind who didn't care who got stepped on as long as her shoes stayed clean, the kind who stood beside a man like Harper, not because she loved him, but because he made her feel untouchable. But now they were both radioactive. The story had already spread. The video was posted anonymously that same night. The guests whispered first, then screens lit up, and by morning it had hit the regional news blogs. Someone leaked the invitation. Someone else posted screenshots of Harper's old campus connections. It didn't take long for everything to catch fire. And that's when the messages started. Olivia was first. "Can we talk?" Then I didn't know. I swear I didn't. "Finally, I need you to call me. I'm not safe." "He's not who I thought he was." I didn't reply. Harper messaged next. No apology, just desperation. "You need to tell people it's fake. You were there. You saw how calm she was. It's all a setup." I blocked his number. But they didn't stop. One morning, I found a letter taped to our motel door, Olivia's handwriting again. It read, "You win." If that's what this was about, I hope you're happy with your little rescue project. You've ruined 2 lives for your ego. Is she really worth all this? I folded the note calmly and walked it to the dumpster, tossed it in without reading it twice. Later that night, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered, expecting spam. Instead, a voice said, "You don't know me." But I saw the video. I'm one of the others. My chest went still. "There are more of us," she continued. She opened the door. It hit me all at once. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. And she had started it. Not for spectacle, not for drama, but for justice. And I was no longer the man standing on the outside looking in. For the first time in my life, I was part of something real. But the story wasn't over. Because a few days later, someone knocked on our motel door at 6:15 in the morning. When I opened it, Olivia was standing there. And she wasn't alone. She stood in the doorway like she was waiting for applause that never came. Olivia looked nothing like the woman I had married, not even like the woman who destroyed me. She looked hollow, pale, the kind of pale you only see in people who haven't slept for days because they're afraid to close their eyes. Next to her stood a man I didn't recognize. Tall, sharply dressed, too put together for this run-down motel lot at dawn. His eyes scanned everything like a cop who already hated the report he'd have to file. She didn't ask to come in. She just stepped inside like it still belonged to her. I stepped back more, stunned than anything. My partner stood up slowly from the edge of the bed, arms folded, no fear in her at all. Olivia's first words weren't, "I'm sorry." They were, "You need to shut her down." I blinked. "What?" "She's spreading lies," Olivia said. Her voice cracked, but she tried to hide it behind her usual false authority. "Whatever she thinks happened, it's gotten out of control. Harper's been fired. My parents stopped speaking to me. My name is trending with hashtags I didn't even know existed. We're getting death threats. And this," she pointed at my partner, "this is all her fault." "No," I said quietly. "It's yours." The man beside her spoke for the first time. "I'm her attorney. If this continues, there will be defamation suits. Harassment claims. We will pursue all legal remedies available. My partner let out a short laugh. Good. I'd love to go under oath. The attorney flinched, just slightly. Olivia's eyes snapped to me. You think this makes you noble, helping her destroy someone's life? What happened wasn't what she thinks it was. She twisted it. I walked past her, opened the door wide. You should go, but she didn't move. Do you know what people are calling me now? What they're calling him? I'm being canceled for something I didn't even do. You didn't stop it. I said, you knew who he was. I didn't know it was her, Olivia shouted. I didn't remember her face. It was years ago. What was I supposed to do? Run background checks on every party story? Say her name, my partner said, suddenly calm. Olivia turned to her. What? Say my name. If you're so sure I'm lying, say it. You never used it back then. Either just called me that, freshman. Say it now. The room went so quiet. I could hear the hum of the old mini-fridge. Olivia's mouth opened, closed. Then she looked at me like I might save her. I didn't. She broke right there in the doorway. Her hands came up to cover her face, and for a second I saw what she really was underneath all the polished surface. Not just a liar, not just selfish, but afraid. I didn't mean for any of this, she whispered. He said it would go away. My partner stepped forward. That's the problem. People like you hope it goes away. People like me have to carry it. Olivia backed out without another word. The lawyer looked at me like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. They got into a black sedan and left. No drama, no apology, just retreat. We didn't speak for a long while after that. The sun rose slowly, painting gold across the cheap walls and the tiny square window. I thought about how small the room still was, but how somehow I no longer felt trapped inside it. Later that afternoon, we got a call from a reporter, not a sleazy one, a real investigative journalist. They were putting together a piece on institutional silence, stories that had gone unspoken for too long. They wanted her voice, her face, her truth. She looked at me while holding the phone and asked, "Are you okay with that?" Me being known. I said, "You've always been known. They just didn't deserve to see it until now." She smiled, not the kind that says everything's okay, but the kind that says, I know who I am now. And that night, for the first time in years, I didn't dream about Olivia or Harper or the cabin or the couch or the ring on the floor. I just dreamed about ocean wind and warm silence and her hand in mine. But the final part of this story, it came a week later when Harper sent me a message I never expected and made me an offer I never thought I'd hear. The message came at 2:03 a.m. I saw the glow of my phone on the nightstand, blinked twice, then instinctively rolled over to check. I expected spam, maybe some bot trying to sell me crypto, but instead it was a name I hadn't seen in months. Harper. The text was short. Need to talk. It's important. Please. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later, another one came. I'll pay. Whatever you want. Just meet me. I showed her the messages in the morning over coffee. She read them silently, set the phone down on the table between us and said, "You're not going." But I was. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to gloat, but because there was one last weight in my chest. And if I didn't face it, face him, it would live there forever like a splinter. I refused to pull. I met him at a cafe downtown, the kind of place where people wore scarves indoors and talked about things like market shifts and artisan acidity. He sat at a table in the back, hunched, sunglasses on, hoodie pulled low. He looked like a shadow trying to hide from its own shape. I sat down. He didn't speak right away. Finally, he said, "I'm being sued. There are depositions, recordings. I can't sleep. I have to check every room I walk into now." I sipped my coffee and waited. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder. My legal team wants you to sign a letter just saying you were there. You didn't see anything illegal. Just character reference. Not even for court, just something to help with public perception. I stared at the folder, then looked him dead in the eye. Number. He blinked. I'll pay you. I said no. You owe me something, man, he said, his voice cracking. You wouldn't even have her if I hadn't taken Olivia. I leaned forward, calm. Exactly. You did me a favor. You handed me the last lesson I needed. Never confuse confidence with character. And for that I'm grateful. But I don't owe you a damn thing. He sat back like I'd slapped him. I stood, pushed the chair in gently, and left. That was the last time I saw him. 3 months later, the expose aired on our national network. My partner's interview was calm, clear, devastating. More survivors came forward. Harper disappeared from public life completely. Olivia posted one final apology, not to anyone in particular, just to the void, and deleted all her accounts. Meanwhile, we moved, not far, just enough to start new, a town where nobody whispered behind their hands. We rented a small house with a porch that creaked under morning coffee, where the neighbors waved without asking questions, and the hardware store clerk remembered our names. After one visit, she started painting again. Not just portraits now, but big pieces, wild, emotional landscapes that she hung in a local gallery. People started noticing. One even sold for more than our rent. As for me, I went back to writing. Not angry poems or sad journals, but honest stories. I even got published a small magazine. Nothing flashy, but it meant something because it was mine. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and the porch light flickered on, she sat beside me and said, "You never told me why you stayed at that motel so long. Why you didn't just go back to your family." I smiled, because that place was the first time in my life I didn't pretend. It was ugly, but it was honest. And it gave me you. She didn't say anything, just reached for my hand and held it like it anchored her. We didn't get married right away. There were no vows, no rings, no guest lists. But every morning when I woke up and saw her beside me, her paint-stained fingers curled against my shoulder, the sunlight slipping through cracked blinds, I knew I'd already made the only promise that mattered. Never again would I settle for someone who didn't see me. Not just as someone safe or quiet or easy, but as someone whole, because she didn't fix me. She reminded me I was never broken.